Hello, everybody. I am back. It's been a couple of months and it is so nice to kind of reset in 2025. It's kind of nice to kind of take yourself back and really just figure out what's really important in your life and what you want to focus on and what you don't want to focus on. And when I did my own journaling, the entrepreneurial talk show was one of them that I really wanted to focus back on. So here we are. Happy New Year's. I am so blessed to be here with one of my colleague / old client / friend, Stephanie Patterson. And this is really a blessing because Stephanie Patterson was also part of the rebirth of the Corporate Nurse Coach Association. Her and her cohort really was the one to kind of help me shape the new version of what's coming out. And here we are on a new time and a new day. And here we are reshaping the entrepreneurial talk. I'm so excited to have you here. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. How are you? And tell us a little bit about you and what you do and what brought you into nurse coaching.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So good to see you again.
I know.
It's been a minute. Let's see. Oh, what brought me to nurse coaching? I discovered lifestyle medicine first. So if you will remember, I was in grad school for that first. And then I just kind of stumbled across nurse coaching and coaching in general. Didn't know about it and discovered it online. And literally, like within 3 days, I said, crap. Now I have a decision to make because I wanted to do a coaching program, but I was in a master's degree that was very expensive. And so in 3 days, I just kind of like made up my mind and switched from master's degree to graduate certificate, refunneled my funds to do nurse coaching and never looked back. And I'm so happy that I did. And the beautiful thing is I pursued my lifestyle medicine board certification and got that in the process, finished the coaching program, finished the graduate certificate, and now I get to use all of them. And it's beautiful.
It's so pretty. It's so beautiful to see. And watching your journey even from a year and a half ago.
No. When did we start? We started January last year.
Last year, but prior to that, me and you had our first conversation.
Yeah. We first connected like over a year and a half.
September, October. Wow.
Before that, it was like June or July because I went to a conference in August.
That's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Time flies.
Time does fly. But this is the other thing that I want people to remember, that anybody that's in my community, this is what happens. Like, we don't realize it, but then next thing you know, we're like on girlfriend talks. Like people comes up or you're really excited to go back and be like, oh my God, what are you doing? How are things? Kelly was at the retreat or the conference that I hosted a year and a half ago.
That was 2 years.
2 years ago?
When that was like October or something when you guys.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So y'all, like this is what. Okay. This is where time flies. Time just flies.
Right.
You know. But it's really nice to hear because initially, I want people to understand a little bit of your story, if you don't mind me if I share.
Go for it.
How the perception that it came on my end.
Yeah.
So first, Stephanie was very clear. Like, I want to do corporate Bina. I want to do this. I want to go here. I want to blah blah blah. Right. And then all of a sudden, she goes into this mastery program. She comes out, and then all of a sudden she goes, I don't want to do corporate no more. I want to do lifestyle medicine. And I was like, perfect. And then from that, you went into the lifestyle medicine. Then you wanted to do one-on-one coaching. You went back to corporate. You went back to kind of a little bit of where it comes in. And what I really want to like hone in on this is that when people, and not that you did this, but when people have that first talk or that first like initial state, I always tell people you're always going to go back to it.
Mm-hmm. I knew I would too. Oh yeah. I did the same thing back when I tried on my first prom dress. Even back then. In high school, that was true. Tried on 14 dresses. I bought the first damn one I tried on.
And again, not everybody's like this, but the majority of the time, it's when I've now coached over, now I have to go look back at numbers. Like, I think I've coached over 150, 200 nurse coaches now. I think altogether, like with all my corporate clients, CEO clients, everything else now, I think in this past 3 years now, I think I've coached over 1,000 people. Like the numbers are insane. So I'm sure my numbers are a lot lower than what I'm stating, you know? And it really goes back to that level of like, follow your passion, follow your dreams. You were very adamant about it. And then you kind of detoured, which I said, okay, let her go. And I even stated, I was like, she's going to come back.
She's
coming back. And then you did. And so
I never intended to though. Like it wasn't like none of it was ever, it's so organic and dynamic the way it happens when you're just authentic and attuned, which is like, I have a framework now. And that's part of my framework to guide your decisions is listening to basically literally going with your gut. That's just what I've done over the whole past year. There was a whole reset that needed to happen last year. So that was part of it too.
Yeah.
That definitely played into it.
And what part of it, because I know this is part of your framework, is like following that intuition. What is something you can tell like people who are listening, using your journey for the past year and a half to now you have a very solid foundation, you're doing different things, you know, you have a YouTube channel, which I'm still like sitting there out there. I'm going to promote it just because I like it.
It is on pause, but not indefinitely. Too many things working and teasing things out. But yeah, it's coming back.
And I want people to realize that Stephanie's gift is this lifestyle medicine, but she's also now taking this lifestyle medicine framework into corporations, into her speaking engagements. And that's how this YouTube channel is coming out with this lifestyle medicine. And it's really going back to the simplicity of life. And, you know, if you're really looking for that simplicity of life, I really recommend anybody, not just because I love her, but I'm really saying this because I've actually used some of her tools even in my own world. Really use it, really reach out to her, because it really does make a difference when, you know, those lifestyle changes are needed. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your framework.
Well, first to back up to kind of also clarify a little bit of that journey with the lifestyle medicine. I think it's important to note as well why I kind of waxed and waned a little bit and why it's so good to have a coach. Thank you, Bina. I had a hard time of I felt like I had to let go of the nursing portion in that lifestyle medicine after investing so much time and money. And for a while, I didn't know how to articulate it. I had a sales and marketing problem, really, in the end is what it ended up being. And I had to figure out for myself what I was selling, which takes a lot of time. So, you know, for people out there listening, keep rolling with it.
That's like the main thing, right? Like everybody knows what they want. Everyone has a vision. It's really getting that framework of how do I articulate this to somebody else.
Yeah.
So it's clear and concise, but that's where the business goal really comes in with, are you even clear with yourself? And it does take some people. It took you a year and a half. Like you're not solid. Like
I was always clear with myself, but I A, didn't trust that there was market for it. B, couldn't say it to other people eloquently for a very long time. But you helped with the beginning.
Can I quiz you? What's your elevator pitch?
3 months, and it was all in the end. It was, you know, it's just reps, right? You go through, you talk, you practice, you talk, you over and over again, and see what works and doesn't. So eventually, I started realizing all of the conversations I was having, and people I would coach, and you know, informational interviews I would have with leaders, and there were certain tools and things I would find on repeat that I would say over and over, and I'm like, okay, this is clearly resonating, it's clearly sticking, it works, and then over time, we just kind of put it together and you formalize a process.
Yeah.
So no, poof, now I'm
gonna put you on the spot. What's your elevator pitch?
Oh, stop it, Bina. You can't do that to me.
But like, you say it. Like, what would you tell me? Like, what would you tell people? Like, what do you do?
Wellness is a leadership tool. So I bring wellness into corporations. I work with executives and decision makers in businesses. We learn how to integrate wellness, work, and life.
And it's funny because even people that are in my cohorts now or in my one-on-ones, I say the same thing. I go, what's your offer? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, yo, like that's the whole point. Like you need to, it has to roll off your tongue, you know? And, you know, whether it's just like with the business school, I help nurse coaches get into large organizations, right? Or whether it's the silent struggle solution piece where I help people feel loved, heard, and empowered. Or the other side, right? Where the real life with special kids, it's like I help parents with special needs. It's like the biggest thing I tell people all the time is that you got to know what you're doing in those business. Because if you don't walk out and you're like, no, and it could be just be as simple as those like 3 sentences, right? And it's really powerful because it did take you, I'm not gonna lie, it took you a long time. It took you a very long time. So I want people to hear that, like, you know, just because you're in a program, I don't care what program you're in, but like, you got to get real with yourself. And it took you a while. And, you know, there was a lot of self-discovery and a lot of aha moments and a lot for you this past year. What was one of the biggest aha moments you had? Because you've had several, but I want to hear from you. What was your big one?
I think in your program, I would say that legacy piece, the fact that I'm doing this to give my mom a legacy that she never had. And that is like the gift that I have to give other people. I think since then, knowing and trusting, I guess like the proof of concept that I do belong in the leadership world, because I didn't really believe it, you know, because it took me a long time to realize exactly how many leadership roles I've been in, but I've never been in management. And I had my head like this warped, you know, belief that leadership equals management. And then I, of course, remembered I've had some pretty shitty managers over the years too, that were not good leaders.
Yeah, because remember, and not to mean to cut you off, and any healthcare provider, any healthcare person that's watching this, I'm not dinging you, but all I'm stating is that there is no true leadership management like program out there for like people to go into assistant managers or people to go into these things. I don't see one, like maybe I should create one, but that goes into that leadership phase of like, this is how you have agreements. This is how you talk to your staff. This is how you do X, Y, and Z. It's not like bedside. You got to take that bedside mentality out. So that is because that's why we have those shitty leaders. They just don't know what they're doing. They get placed because of the roles that nursing's like, oh, I want to get out of bedside. Let me go into management. It's like, no, honey, that don't work. That doesn't work. You don't leave bedside to go to management. You leave bedside, go into entrepreneurship, do what we're doing, go into something that's impactful. Management, I think in nursing world is like a way for them to get away from the traumas of being at bedside. And then they realize that their traumas just kind of follows them.
They still follow them.
Yeah, it follows them.
And the job gets worse.
Because they don't have that development, right? They don't have those clear communications, or they may not have been the best person for that role, but because of the hierarchy and, the hierarchy of life in nursing world, they got it or it's whoever they knew.
Well, I think it's a very limiting path in nursing. If you think non-healthcare corporations, there's expansive growth. There's a lot of lateral moves as well. Right. Where you grow in that. We don't have that in nursing. So it's like, it's just very linear. You do this or you don't. And so, yeah, I think that contributed to kind of this misguided view of leadership. And I had to learn and
let that go.
Realize that lived experience plus honestly stuff I did in nursing, a lot of it was leadership, and then of course obviously entrepreneurship is a lot of leadership as well. It's a mindset, it's a way you show up, it's what you do with your day and how you work with other people. So once I learned that definitely shifted things, shifted my conversations, gave me a lot more confidence, because I always loved working with, as you know, high achievers. I came in, I'm like, high achievers, and they're like, yeah, it needs to be more narrow than that. So I'm like, but high achievers is all I know.
And it took you a while to understand, and maybe you can explain to somebody else, what did I mean by that? Because for people, you're like, high achievers, and I kept narrowing it. It's really difficult for a lot of people to do. And even now, like I get on some of these calls and somebody's like, I'm just using an example. There's no one off the top of my head. I'm just giving people that. Someone's like, oh, I want to be a mindset coach. And someone's like, I want to be a spiritual and awakening coach. And I'm like, great, but what clientele do you want? Oh, I can just help anyone and anybody. And I'm like, but that doesn't work, because it's like, I have rings, and then I have a lip gloss, and I have this battery pack, everything, but my framework can help every single person, but it's not going to be suitable for this person or that person. I think it's just hard for people to understand that concept.
I think it's hard because one, I knew that I could help more, but I also understood the importance of narrowing down, because you need to be able to speak to that person essentially through something that you post online. Needs to speak to them as though you directly are speaking to them. And it's really hard. Like, for instance, even when I said I work with leaders, then people would say, okay, what kind of leaders? I was resistant there too, because I'm like, leaders, like everyone needs.
You're like, anyone that's a leader. It was,
right, like people with a mindset, right? It's a certain mindset. And then finally I said, you know what? And for me, it was, I need someone, really, my goal is to do like a hybrid coaching consulting. I always want to do one-on-one coaching on the side, but I want this hybrid coaching consulting where I work with that leader and then we bake this into their business model. Can't do that unless they're a decision maker. So that automatically narrowed it down to like a business owner, a CEO, the executive levels, anyone who's a big decision maker. And so that kind of forced me eventually. And then finally I said, it does make sense, because when you are talking to that person, it is just different than talking to someone who's in like middle management. The phrasing you use, the words you say, and it comes through. It's and it's not subtle. It's just these really little micro decisions and things that you see. Like, for instance, I was working on the book right now. I changed the title of my book. She said, this is great, but why would I be reading it? And I had to explain like, oh, well, it's a marketing tool. I would send it to you and blah, blah, blah. And I said, but the fact that she had to ask that is feedback. And I said, it's not clear. So I changed the header on my book to make it crystal fucking clear. But yeah, so anyway, no, to the point being though, is that we can help more people, or my framework would help all sorts of people. It would help stay-at-home mothers, but you just can't talk to everyone. And even using terms that feel specific really are not. When you really kind of get out into the world, you start realizing leadership is really broad. Middle management is very broad.
And I want people to understand, when we talk about a framework, the framework is what the product within your program that you are selling. Okay. When I teach about frameworks, it specializes to Stephanie. It specializes to Alex. It specializes to Kelly, right? And what happens is that I didn't even know I had a framework until my coach actually showed me what my framework was. Didn't have a name, now it does. Once you get clear with what you want to do and how you want to do it, that's the how-to part of it. The framework is how do you get somebody from A to Z? And in nurse coaching, this is what's missing in a lot of coaching programs. A lot of people have came to me from multiple different programs, and they're like, we're just not getting clients. I'm not doing this. And I'll ask them, what's your framework? And they're like, what is that? I'm like, what do you mean? What is that? Like, what is your strategy? What journey? What are you taking your clients through? And they're like, oh, we don't have that. I'm like, well, then how are you expecting to be different than just a normal mindset nurse coach, which everybody's like, oh, I'm preventative care. Great. But what does that entail? And framework is the key, guys, here, because if you don't have a framework, and this is what I teach in the business school, not only creating your program, but creating that framework that works for you, that works for Steph. And it took Stephanie a long time to create this framework, guys. So if you're at a mastery level coaching container, and I reframed, my framework has changed multiple times too, probably from the last time me and you've spoken, even. Because people have to remember, it's adapting. It adapts with you.
Right.
But it's your foundation. And it's really hard unless you're in my program to really understand that. But that's why I truly believe that the business school really teaches people that like than any other like program out there, especially for nurse coaches.
It was such a great foundation because I knew when I started, I had a lifestyle medicine assessment, which is still in my framework. It's just expanded and grown. I still use that same tool. It just has like 6 other tools and like 40 other, reflection prompts in there too. And it has a whole, like almost like a story arc. And that was, I think, really what finally got me to put it down on paper is I finally had an opportunity to do more than an elevator pitch.
Right.
Because I was invited to a networking event specifically to talk to the CEO of a company because this branch manager wants me to help, work with their bank, and she wanted to connect. And I said, okay, if I'm going to have a real conversation, I need to actually explain what I do. And I hadn't really made it to that. So when it came to like, hey, there's a potential B2B deal brewing here, I actually need to sound like I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but I need to sound like I know what I'm doing. So I started putting stuff on paper, and finally, eventually, I'm like, hey, I can make a workbook out of this. And then I was like, hey, if I explain this a little more, I could have a book. And it just kind of evolves. You don't know what path you're going to go down.
That's the best part, is the method that I use is, and the foundation of it is you're able to co-create that even without my help. Like that's where I think the biggest thing is like, I love my people. And if anyone in my container knows, if you were in my container at any given point, you can still call and connect with me. And I jump on a call with you within the next couple of days, because that's the relationship I keep. But it's also where it's almost like a one-stop shop, right? Where you shouldn't, I mean, you can, but like for other developmental things, but you have that foundation. What was one of the biggest challenges this past year for you?
I actually just was able to articulate that to my husband this morning.
Oh.
There was a really cool thought exercise that I came across recently. I was listening to a coaching session on a podcast, just mindless stuff to put on in the car, driving my kid to daycare. He basically had this other person that was being coached go through. They gave them the sentence stem and they said, do this 10 times, whatever comes to your mind, say it. And the first sentence stem was like, if I get what I want, blank. And right, he goes through that and lists all the good things that'll happen. And then he said, okay, now the worst thing that'll happen when I get what I want is. And this other guy stumbled through it, but I was like, oh, that's unique. And I kind of thought through it because I said, I've always wondered this last year, I'm like, has there been some kind of block? Why have I struggled so much? I'm an overachiever. So of course I'm not happy that it hasn't happened fast enough. And so I'm going through this and I started thinking through it. And one of the things he said was, then I'll have more responsibility and that takes more time and that's less freedom if I get what I want. And I'm like, yes, nailed it right there. For me, this last year, and we struggled with this, you were constantly telling me, Steph, to slow down. My mind and my body, after everything I had been through for the last few years prior to that, I desperately needed the down year to just kind of go with the flow, live the simple life. And I just wasn't letting myself do that because I had this business, I had this ambition, I wanted to go. And I had this constant push-pull in my brain all year. And I think that had been my biggest struggle. And if I had just kind of like listened to you more,
it's not me, it's intuition. It's not me, right? Like when I see greatness and when I see things, and even like I'm working with another one-on-one right now, and she was like, I want to go here and I want to do this and I want to do that. And when I sat down with her, even on yesterday's one-on-one call, It was more of like, but what do you want? What's your impact? What are you doing with this? Where are we going? And I was just texting her like bits and pieces of certain things. And, you know, it's interesting because there's some deprogramming that has to occur. It's like, oh, well, I already know this. I already know this. I knew that. I knew this. And now it's just like, but do you really? And last night, just this morning, we had a text message. She's like, oh my God, this feels better. Like when I asked her about her spiritual journey, about certain things, healing, she was able to just like boom, 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 boom. And I'm like, isn't that interesting? And now she has a tattoo that just symbolizes it. I was like, well, that can be an emblem. Oh, Bina, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
You know, now it's like, okay, well, what comes in? Like, oh, guess what? I'm doing this free workshop with a healing journey. And I'm like, and she's like, oh my God, it just all made sense now. And I'm like, I didn't do that, but all I'm doing was pushing it because she was really frustrated with me yesterday. She got a little frustrated with me, but I kept telling her, I'm like, just stick with it. Just like, hear me out. I'm asking questions for a reason. And by the time we got done with the call and I read it back to her, she was like, yeah, that sounds good. And I'm like, don't make it overcomplicated then.
Right.
Don't overcomplicate it. And I'm not stating names and stuff just to, you know, just for privacy purposes, but she'll know who I'm talking about when this airs, or if she's not listening to it, you know, already. But it's beautiful when you get to see that. It's beautiful when you go back and you're like, it was that simple.
It really was. It was like, I needed rest last year. I fought against it all year. Probably wouldn't have struggled if I had, you know, I was kind of delusional, I think. I was like, my family needs rest. I'm good.
But it's like you needed that, you know, you needed that. Like you got a beautiful new window behind you that was not there last time we spoke.
The dining room one is the one we changed. It made bigger.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like, okay. But just saying, like, sometimes you do need to prioritize you and your family and your children and your partner in life first. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's the other thing with entrepreneurs is that we want everything right away. We want it and we want it today or we wanted it tomorrow. And when you really, and I understand this because I've been there, you know, I've been where I'm like, this is unsettling. This is like, why am I not getting these deals? Like, why am I not like, there's even in my own world, like, and anyone that's in my container knows, like, there's a lot of that where I'm like, dang, these people ain't calling me back. Like, what's wrong with these people? Like, come on. But there's always a reason why your business and or body wants to slow it down because now, you know, like Seth is a great example too. He slowed down a little bit, then boom, like it just picked up. He's like, I have like 5 proposals to send out. I was like, congratulations.
Yeah.
Great. Where do you need the support? And he's like, yeah, what happened? Like 2 weeks ago, there was nothing. And now all of a sudden you got a new client. I was like, that's because you went back to intuition. You went back to that level of that subconscious mind of, hey, universe, I'm listening. I'm slowing down. I hear this. And now it picks right back up. Same thing. You've done it. I did it last year. Like I went radio silence for a little while just because I did. Just life occurred, you know? Yep. Many of you guys knew that I got really sick back last July, August. And that really hit a turn on me for 6 months. And, you know, then Christmas came and I was like, all right, good night, world.
Yep.
Bye. I mean, the rat in my garage had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, that was insane.
But it made us clean out. Like,
I was like, I saw that post at first, and then I was like, wow, it started with a closet. Now Bina's like really taking this decluttering thing seriously. And then I was like, oh, okay.
It forced us to stay home. It forced us to not do 20,000 things during Christmas. And even during Christmas, we're like, hey, you guys, if you guys all want to come to my house. Like, this is what we're doing. This day, this time. If not, great. Because we can't just pick up and go. Because we literally had to throw everything out from our garage. Because it was just like, I did like all my kids' shoes, anything and everything. I bleached their bikes and things that obviously you can't really, it's expensive to restore. Well, we bleached it, we sanitized it. Even our neighbors came out and they're like, I was like, bring it over. You want something to bleach? Just bring it on over. Like, let's go. Like, come along. You know? But it's just like, but it does take time. Like that took us 3.5 weeks. And my closet is back to being a shit show because of that. But that's okay. But the closet's clean. Things are good. Like things are decluttered. And it really does feel good. It feels good. And that's why now, like in this 2025 version of me, it's kind of like, well, I'm ready. I'm ready for the changes. I'm ready for it. It's like, and I told my husband, I'm like, so when are we going to clean the rest of the house? Like, can we like get the rest of this out?
Well, now I think too, compared to when I first started working with you, you know, we talk about setting like a 5-year goal. And I eventually kind of reframed it. Maybe other people don't need this, but I did, apparently. I set a goal and gave myself 5 years to reach it. that's a distinction that I needed to hear. It was different than like, okay, well, if I set this for a 5-year goal, then I would like reverse engineer and overcomplicate it. And instead it's like, no, I have this goal. It might happen next year. I don't know. I'm going to give myself 5 to 10 years to reach it. And that builds in so much more flexibility.
But I think a lot of people need to hear that too, is that entrepreneurship in general takes 5 years. Like, I don't think people, like, I've always been that 0.01%. And I think people have to realize that, like, I was just in the right place, the right time, and the right circumstances for the first couple of companies to come in. And I think people just have to realize, like, there is a 5-year goal for me. There is a 10-year goal for me, you know? And it's the long game. Like, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. And the people who sprint burn out and they don't last that long. It's like, congratulations, you made $30,000 last year.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Like, there's some people that are still trying to figure out, and they're like, oh, I didn't get my high ticket. I quote high ticket, because pricing is whatever the fuck you want it to be. So I don't understand high tickets, but whatever. That's a whole nother conversation, right? Well, if you haven't hit your high ticket, are you really sure about your program? Are you really 100% clear with what that means for you? And is there a higher impact with it? Because if there's a higher impact with it, then yeah, you will be able to sell. It will sell itself. And I think that's where my secret sauce came in, is that I had the higher impact. I had the higher impact right from day one, helping special kids. Like, that was there from day one. When I go into companies, into this DEI space, it's like, do you have a program for these parents? And they're like, no. I'm like, well, that's where I come in. That same silent struggles is the same thing I can correlate it to any employee. But people have to realize, Silent Struggle Solution, that name just got born. The Silent Struggle Solution, I came up with the name. Like, oh my God, I gotta get stickers and put out like everything.
The printing, right?
Printing issue was such a mess.
I was thinking of you with that literally 2 days ago, as I was up until 11:30 printing out my workbook. Because I was like, no big deal. I know Bina went to Staples or whatever and got stuff printed the same day. Speaking about stickers, talk about sticker shock. I was like, you want to charge how much for ink on paper?
It was
no, I'll do this myself.
Insane. And I know we're going a little off topic here, but I want people to understand that, like, when you're printing marketing, when you're printing certain things, even like my book, you know, like, it says Supermom CEO on here, but this is like the same book that I hand out to you guys, right? Like, even now, I'm like, I use this one because I'm like, dude, this is like $30 each. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah, it was pricey. And I was like, no, I want this professional. So you use a printer, but it's time or money, one way or the other. And those are the things that you don't really always plan for, but you go with the flow, right? And like you said, it's about like understanding. I
just want to warn people. It doesn't mean that you need that in the beginning.
Nope. In fact, I wasted money on printing things. I just cleared out a big old Canva thing. I'm like, I don't need this. I'll never need this again, for sure.
So those are things where we talk about financial energy, you know, like, someone asked me this on a podcast or a thing, and I forgot what it's called. I think the reel just came out of, like, you know, someone asked me, they go, oh, so I came up with something with like my entrepreneurship or something. I went on a rant with money, and it doesn't matter how much money you make. It's about how much you spend, where your value is, what things come up. And there are things now, 3 years in, that I wish I knew like 4 years ago. Which is now incorporated in the Business School 2.0. I've made over $1 million. Yeah, over this past 3 years. When I looked back and I was like, oh shit. Okay. I can actually say I'm a 7-figure business person now. Not a 6-figure, you know? And I was like, whoa, like those numbers, me and my husband, we were saying, we're like, that's impressive, you know, in 3 years. But then I spent a lot of money, and I spent a lot happened last year, and I lost a lot of money. I lost $500,000 in revenue last year. And it's like, it evened out. Then you're like, oh, that's why I'm broke.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, okay, lessons learned. You know, people, like, it's that lessons learned. And, you know, you're seasoned. I call you seasoned now. It's like, okay. And FYI, guys, if anybody wants real, true Canva training or a 1-page flyer, talk to Stephanie, because me and Stephanie can go into a rabbit hole with Canva, but I've never met my pair. Like, I never met my
guys. I cranked out this workbook. I'm going to send it to you after this call. And I cranked it out in one day. You're going to be impressed. Even you are going to be impressed.
But just in general, if you guys comes up, but I know we're talking a little offline here. Yeah. So also wanted to just, while the listeners are watching, and we'll watch this replay because it will go circulating back in. What are, like, if you were to be somebody listening, what are different topics and things you would want to hear more of?
Primarily from a like new nurse coach perspective. Yeah. Definitely more. There's not enough information out there, I think. People need to hear that it takes 5 years. Even coming into this, I don't want to say like, oh, well, it's those people. I kind of felt like, oh, if I have the right training and everything, then I can accelerate that. You can't. So I think there needs to be a lot more transparency, because too much of what we see is the product. It's the people who are like, oh, I'm finally getting my feet under me. I'm finally, I've made it big. I'm successful now. And there's not enough transparency in kind of talking about the ugly first couple of years. And there is out there, it's abstract though, or it's high level, or it's just kind of just, reflecting a little bit in little snippets. But like, I don't know, it'd be really cool to hear about the ugly truth. Like, oh yeah, 16 times last year I wanted to quit.
But it's also good to hear, because as I'm in different marketing campaigns, I'm in different networks now, right? And this is specifically for nurse coaching, not necessarily for other entrepreneurs out there, just to make that distinction, is that nurse coaches, we need to step up. Like, you guys, like, the levels of what I'm hearing and the levels that I'm learning and the levels of things that we come in, like, I am truly blessed in my own world, one, to have access to certain levels of different high caliber people to help out. But it's also, I'm now able to incorporate that into the business school and to really showcase and be that lonely pioneer for other people, because it's not a cookie cutter. You cannot make a cookie cutter program. You can have a lifestyle, somebody else can have a lifestyle coaching, but your framework is going to be your framework, and somebody else's framework has to be their framework. Yeah. And I think what's happening right now in nurse coaching is that there's a lot of false sense of security and a lot of positive toxicity going around still. And people are still in this political game of, these are all my clients and only my clients, type of thing. Or they made it look easy. They're like, oh, well, that's easy. The ones that made it look easy are the ones that made it look easy, because it is easy, And I'm not talking about this for any new nurse coach that's coming in. Like, just know that there are programs out there that are supportive. Stephanie's program is supportive. Jen Mall's program is supportive. Like, there's no room for competition. And I want to repeat that again. I
think it's hard for nurses to see some of that too, because again, we kind of are compared to someone who, say, works in the tech industry or goes into marketing or HR. There's a lot of transferable skills, and they get to practice that more. There's less of that in nursing, and we are in our own little world. And when a nurse steps out of that, they don't know what they don't know. I had a taste of that because I did work in industry. So I did step away from the hospital even before I left bedside, right? Before I left traditional nursing. So I at least had a taste of that. I went to conferences, I presented, I had a little bit of that. And I think that was certainly at an advantage and helped me kind of come around to this more. And I was actively kind of able to see it and look at it. But otherwise, you can't read your own label from inside your jar. You need someone else to point that out. And so I think if there's a message to send to nurse coaches, is also to just know there's a lot that you need to learn. It's like in entrepreneurship, you're starting at a deficit compared to, I think, other people who have other real world business experience. Right. It's just, but we also have a lot of strengths that they don't have. So once we kind of make up for that business deficit, we can soar. But exactly. I think there's a little bit, especially in the business world, we're martyrs. We don't take care of ourselves. We will drive ourselves to burnout. We do these things because we're nurses. And then it just, on top of that, we have to actually put in a little more effort because we have more to learn, because we just haven't been in the business world.
Yeah. No, and it's true. The ones I talk about when I come on my entrepreneur talk, when it's me, myself, and I, there'll be no more than 10, 15 minutes, because what I want you guys to realize is there's going to be one talk or one topic that I'm going to be talking about, and I'm basically going to just rant, is what I do. Because usually when my rants, I'm not going to lie to you guys, my rants are usually the truth. And my rants are usually the ones where people say I call the bullshit, or I'm the martyr of certain things. But I just want to relate to people that if I'm not calling out this bullshit, or if I'm not calling it out, people are thinking it. And there just not comes up. And 2025, I told myself, even in my own world, that I'm not going to hold back. And I want to be able to release some of those silent struggles that I have been facing over this past 18 months. And really be able to express it in a very loving way, but also to remind people that, there are times and places where you think the world is perfect, and in reality, it's not. If you guys watch this new reel that's coming out, it talks about money, it talks about income, it talks about how I made 7 figures and yet still had to take out certain loans and was scared 1 month about mortgage and certain things. And it's because of the fact that I made some stupid choices, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. So Steph, with just a couple of minutes to spare, what is the one, I always like to end with this. What's one advice, if you can give nurse coaches or people in entrepreneurship, if you can give them one advice, what would that big advice be? If you have like known this like through 2 years ago.
Get comfortable and learn how to be polarizing. And that doesn't mean you're looking for conflict. It's just the things that come out of your mouth, either they're going to resonate with people or it isn't. And it's not right or wrong. It's just that's what gives you your distinction. It makes you unique in your business. And when you find that voice and you're able to start polarizing people, and you say, someone talks to you and they say, you're not my cup of tea, and you're okay with that, you'll do just fine.
Yeah, that's powerful. I'm actually going to leave it ended at that because that just summarizes everything.
Perfect.
So thank you. Stay on longer. Thank you, everyone. This will be aired back on YouTube. We will be circulating this. And like I said, on YouTube, please like and share and subscribe. And let me know how I can support you guys. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Bina.